Hi Flosstube, it's Lori McClary, textilist. Welcome to my channel and the 10th day of Vlogmas. So as I hinted yesterday, today is baking day, today and tomorrow. And this is kind of a fun day for me. This is one of the highlights of the holiday season. This is going to be a test of my video recording and editing skills. The camera is quite a ways away from me, so I'm going to have to like run around the counter and turn it on and turn it off. So I hope this works. I have a lot to tell you today. I don't know how long this video is going to be. It could be a full-length feature film with lots of editing. So if you see jump cuts, sorry, I can't get around those. So as I mentioned, making cookies is a highlight of my season. It's always an event. As I said yesterday, I used to make dozens and dozens and dozens of cookies. In fact, if I can find them, I will pull out some vintage pictures of holiday baking past and put them somewhere here in the video, maybe in the beginning or the end. I'm just gonna kind of go through everything. This is chaotic joy. I'm not quite sure where to start. Probably starting at the planning process. So generally what I do is I go through my recipe box and I pull out all of the favorites and maybe, you know, a few recipes that I might want to try or something. And I add up all of the ingredients. I make sure I have enough butter, enough eggs, enough shortening, enough chocolate chips, enough whatever it is that I need. And then I go through my cupboards, check my spices, make sure I have enough of everything. I hate running out of things in the middle of baking day. So I've done that. Today we're only going to talk about 2 or 3 cookies. The peanut butter cookie, I mentioned my peanut butter cookie recipe, and there has been a lot of interest in that peanut butter cookie recipe. So that is the first one we're gonna make today, and I will share my recipe. Now, my recipe comes from my mom. It's not mine. I'm not sure where she got it. I do know it's not like, it's not the exact ingredients or ratio of any other recipes that I've seen. I love a good peanut butter cookie, and in fact, I have to say I love every peanut butter cookie, kind of like I like every potato. But they came from my mom's recipe book, her original one, and I want to share some things with you. I'm going to share a lot of memories with you today. So that recipe was in a typewritten cookbook that she did. Now, I don't know if she just did this for herself, if she did it as part of a school assignment. I do know she did this in high school. And I have pages, I have the cookie section. I don't have the whole cookbook, I have the cookie section. I don't remember when those were passed to me, but I cherish them. They're here, they're yellowed. So these are from the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s. And this is where that peanut butter cookie recipe comes from. While we're talking about recipes, I would like to share another treasure with you. I think I've shown this before. This is a recipe box that my daughter made for me when she was in high school. It has pictures, family pictures. That's me. Those are my brothers. That's my son. That's my youngest brother. That's me again, a little bit older. My kids during a baking session when they were young. I love this recipe box. She basically went through pictures that she liked. This is my daughter and friends in another cookie session. And she picked out pictures and she decoupaged them onto this recipe box. And then she put that in there. And this is where I keep the recipes I use the most. And I love cookbooks, but my favorites are the handwritten ones from your friends, from your family. These are my recipe cards. I typed these up years and years ago. You can see by the colors that they are well loved, and I still use them, and I'll use them until they're not usable anymore. But I wanted to share a little bit more of my recipe book collection. Most of this is cookies, but some of it is just general recipe books. I love finding old ones. This one is early 1900s. Oh, this one's from Bend, Oregon. Oh my gosh, I did not realize that. Let's put on the glasses. It's called Cupid's Book. It is published in Bend, Oregon. I don't see a year yet, but it's quite old. It has breads, it has stuffings, it has sauces, it has pastries, puddings, preserves. This kind of gives you an idea of the age of this book. So I pick these up wherever I find them. I love just decorating with them, and I love looking at the old recipes. This is another treasure. This is from my mom, and it was her home economics book. So cooking in high school. One year she asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I told her I wanted this book. And so she gave it to me in 2009. And this is a textbook, but it's also a cookbook, Food for Better Living. And it was published in 1949. And there are some great recipes in here. I think I have at least one cookie recipe that came from here. I don't remember which one, but that's a treasure. A couple other cookbooks that I'd like to share. This one, if you remember recipes from your mother, your great-grandmother, you know, your aunties, whatever, and they came from a label or the back of the box or something. This was put together, it's been quite a while, several years ago. And I think you can still find it, but basically it's just a collection of recipes off of boxes and labels and things that the different manufacturers would put out. There's a lot of great stuff in here. Chances are that special recipe that was your Aunt Martha's might have been actually from the back of a box. This is a fantastic book. The title says it all butter, fresh cream, sugar-packed baking book. And this is the shortbread recipe that I use every year. It's my favorite. This is a cookbook that I love simply because it has all of the Norman Rockwell pictures in it. I've not tried a recipe out of it yet, but maybe someday I will. I don't cook as much now as I used to. I don't do a lot of big family dinners. You know, the family is grown and scattered. And then of course everyone has one of these. Mine is from 1969 was the first publishing. I don't think that's the year I got it. I think that was the year that this version was published. And this is a stamp. It has stood the test of time. You can find a lot of these recipes for free online at Betty Crocker. So if you ever are missing one, you can go online and look for it. This is the biscuit recipe I use. Okay, we've went through recipe books. Let's talk about more preparation. So preparing, you know, getting all of your ingredients together. I generally, as you can see, I have a big loaded counter here. So I clear the counter off and I pull out everything. I pull out all my bowls, I pull out extra bowls, I pull out, you know, my flour, sugar, everything like that. And then I pull out the backups because I know I'm going to run out at some point. The night before, depending on what cookies I'm going to make the next day, I generally put out all the butter to soften overnight that I'm going to need to. Now some recipes call for cold butter, so that just stays in the fridge. I try to find something, let's see if I can do this without making a lot of noise. I find something to throw like all my spices in so that I don't lose them, because I'm constantly losing the salt or losing the baking powder. I pull out all of my ingredients, pull out my pans. I did want to talk a little bit about pans. I prefer using the old-fashioned tin. I don't use nonstick. I tried it a couple years. I just did not like the way the cookies turned out. They don't brown correctly. They have a different texture. And I'm not wild about, you know, something that's chemically made that I'm putting my food on. So I pick these up a lot at yard sales. Let me back up. Well, let's talk about this and then I'll show you my cookie sheets. So this is my preferred type of pan. This is a cupcake pan, of course, and they are made by Echo. They're also known as Ovenex. And I believe these were originally made in the UK. I am not positive, but I think they were. So this is just one example. I do bake with this occasionally, but right now it's mostly decoration. These are the type of pie pans I use, also the same company. This one's a newer one. I don't think it's ever been used, or maybe only used a couple times. And yeah, they are made in England. I can see it right now. It has the patent pending. Now what I like about these is the slider, because then that loosens your pie crust or your cake, and this is the way they come. It does take you more time to thoroughly butter or grease, however you're going to grease your pans, but once they get to this stage, see this lovely brown color, this is what you want. Don't scrub that off. In fact, don't use a heavy abrasive or anything on your pans except for a stainless steel pad. Now, if you have something that's stuck to it, then go ahead and use your stainless steel scratchy pad. You can use or not use soap. It kind of depends on what it is. I do occasionally use soap, but then I make sure that I oil these really well after I'm done with it. And then make sure they are thoroughly dry before you put them away. So that's my favorite baking. Here are, pardon me, here are my cookie sheets. This one is the one, it's not as seasoned. It doesn't need to be for what I cook in it. This is the one I make almond roca in. It's the perfect size pan to put the crackers in. It is getting its nice patina, but it's not quite there yet. And this is an aluminum pan by Bake Kina, pure aluminum. And these are my cookie sheets. These are the cookie sheets I have had since I moved out, so over 40 years. Those are hard-worn patinas. They were brand new, shiny when I bought them. Do not use your cookie tins for anything other than baking. Don't use them for putting chicken tenders or any kind of other meat or food. I keep mine strictly for cookies. I have had the occasional instance where someone used my cookie and I had to really clean it to get that out there, because this oil gets baked on and you want that. That's your nonstick right there. Okay, cookie tins. Another important utensil in my cookie kitchen is a heavy-duty wooden spoon. So I do have a KitchenAid over here. I can't turn the camera because it's across the counter. I have a white KitchenAid over here. And I do use it, but I don't use it for mixing certain cookies, particularly the ones I'm going to make today. Well, one of them I'm going to make today. I don't use it for my peanut butter cookie. The reason I don't use the KitchenAid, and it's not that the cookies turn out bad, just the texture's a little bit different. And if you're using something like chocolate chips, it kind of like breaks the chips up into little things. Again, nothing bad. It still tastes fantastic. It's just I like the texture and I like the lumpiness in my chocolate chip cookies or my peanut butter cookies when you are hand mixing them, and I think it works out better. So these are a must in my cookie kitchen. What else do I need to show you? Oh yes, important things. Attire, dress in layers, because it's going to get warm. Here's another cookie memory for me. My grandmother gave me this apron. That was hers when I was 18, and cookie making and holiday meals usually are done in this apron. It is made out of a really nice heavy cotton sacking, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what it's, I don't know if she made it. I don't know if she bought it. It looks handmade to me. Very sturdy. It's went through the wash hundreds of times probably. And it's just a memory and an ode to my grandmother to wear that apron. This is an apron that I made for my daughter when she was 2 for Cookie Day. And I have kept it. She's a minimalist. She doesn't like things, so it stays here and it comes out at Christmas time as a decoration. So there's a few memories of things you need when you're baking cookies. Let's see. Oh, yes, important. You need music. This is my cookie baking music. I can't play it right now because it would be a copyright infringement, but this is my favorite one for baking cookies. It has all the big hits. And then the other one that I really like to listen to is this. Yes, I know, old school, but that's okay. These are wonderful. I don't know if you can get these on, I'm sure you can get all of the collection of the songs on Spotify or any of the streaming music services, but I have this. It works when the Wi-Fi is out. So this is important for cookie making. You have to have that. Another thing that's really important is to have a high protein breakfast, because you are going to be tasting cookies all day long and you don't want to get sugar overload. So high protein breakfast. And what else did I want to show you before we get started? I'm sure there's a couple of other things, but we'll come to them when we come to them. So I'm going to pause here and put a few things away, and we're going to dive into the actual cookies. And I just remembered one other thing. This is also a memory. This is a coffee cup that I've had since my early 20s, and it comes out at Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving, and it gets put away the day after Christmas. Now, I had a holiday accident last year and the handle broke. So I have the pieces. I can't use it for my Christmas beverages. I have the pieces, so if anyone knows the best glue to use for ceramic, I'm sure that's what this is ceramic. So I can put this back together. I may not be able to use the handle, but at least I can still use it without it breaking further. I would really appreciate it because I love my coffee cup. I do want to take a moment to say that this is just the way I make cookies. These are processes and recipes and things that work for me. It doesn't mean they're better than anybody's. These are just the cookies that my family loves, makes me smile. And whatever cookie process and recipe works for you and makes your family happy is the right one. Let's get started. So I'm going to read off my recipe, and I will also put it down below in the description box. And I'm going to make an ask for all of you. If you're watching my video here today, let's do a swap. Let's do a cookie swap. And what I mean by that is I'm going to put my favorite recipe that I've not shared with anyone to date, other than my daughter and my granddaughter, with you. If you would put in your comment your favorite recipe, share with everyone, and then I would love everyone to read through their comments and find new recipes or new takes on old recipes or whatever, and put a memory with it. You know, why is this your favorite recipe? What does it mean to you? I would just love if we could share all those cookie memories with each other. So, peanut butter cookies, for all of you who asked, and there were quite a few of you. It is half a cup of shortening, and I use just regular shortening. Don't use the butter stuff. Use just plain old shortening. I have not made this with lard. I keep wanting to try all my cookies out with lard. I think I'm really interested in how they would turn out. Half a cup of butter, 1 cup of peanut butter, 1 cup of brown sugar, 1 cup of regular granulated sugar, 2 eggs, 2½ cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1½ teaspoons of baking soda, and ½ teaspoon of salt. And we're gonna make these together. I'm probably gonna cut out some different parts of trying to get this put together. I'm gonna try to chat my way through this. And again, I'm gonna put it in the description box, and it's only fair if I'm sharing. I would really, really love for you to share your favorite cookie recipe too. And if there's a tip or a trick, please put that in there as well, because that often makes or breaks a recipe. Okay, here we go. So I have my butter in here already softening, and I'm going to do my shortening. Now, I used to have one of those little things where you put in the shortening and you kind of push it through, because I thought it would make it easier. It doesn't. It's just one more thing that's hard to clean. So if you can have different sets of baking utensils. I'm kind of down to 1 on these, but these are my favorite. They're from Tupperware. They're from years ago. And the reason this set was so awesome is because it has a 1/3 and 2/3 cup. And that was really important to me. So I try to strategize. Let's see, this is going to be ½ a cup. I know I'm going to get this really dirty and with sticky stuff, so I just start out and put it in here and know that I'm going to have to either carefully add different sticky ingredients or wipe it out and clean it. I try to clean as I go. I'm not always successful with that. I hate cleaning up a really, really messy kitchen at the end of the day. So if I can clean things as I go, then I do that. I usually, for convenience sakes, I usually buy the sticks, but they got so expensive last year. They were so expensive, and it was much less expensive to buy the canister. If you're gonna buy the canister and you don't use it for anything other than cookies like me, because I use olive oil mostly or coconut oil in my cooking, then keep it in the fridge. So here's my shortening, and I'm just going to use my knife to get it out of here. I'm probably showing you things you already know, but I just thought I would put it in here, you know, in case there's a new cookie baker in the audience. I feel like Julia Child back here. Now, if you have followed me for any length of time, you know my good friend is Lisa Kindred Stitcher, and she does a fantastic Julia Child impression. I cannot do impressions at all. I can barely do me. Okay, so we've got our ½ a cup of butter, ½ a cup of shortening, and now we're gonna go for the peanut butter. In my humble opinion, the peanut butter you use is definitely going to make a difference in the taste of your cookies. I use crunchy. I'm team crunchy. I like the crunch in there, and I use Adams No Stir. This is one of my concessions to hydrogenated oil. Now it only has, I think it's like 2% hydrogenated oil, and that's because it's really hard to keep the regular, the kind without the hydrogenated oil to keep it stirred and in the summertime. So this is my one concession. I like Adams. I think it has the best taste. You can use Jif. I've used Jif in the past. It makes for a much sweeter cookie. These are sweet enough because it has 2 cups of sugar in it. I'm using the same. I'm just going to use it twice because, you know, I'm going to have to clean it. So I've used off-brands. You can really taste it. My preference is Adams, but use whatever works for you. I've never used a different nut butter. I know there are a lot of people who are allergic to peanuts. And some people prefer almond butter or hazelnut or something like that. I've never used those. I will tell you that if you're using a nut butter that has a lot of oil content, you don't really need to change the amount you're using, but you may get a flatter or a fluffier cookie, one or the other. So here is part 1. I try to remember, kind of like when you're counting cross stitch, I count my cups and I count them out loud so that I don't mess up. So 1 down. We've got our brown sugar over here that we're going to use shortly, and I gave it a little taste, not taste test, I gave it a little test to see how the brown sugar softener disc was working, and it's working great. So here is half a cup to make 1 cup. And I may speed this up and slow it down. I don't know. We'll see how this goes. I've never made cookies on camera before. I'll get that in there. You must taste test all the time. It's required. Let's see what goes next. So I don't necessarily always follow the recipe unless I think it's going to make a difference in the outcome about the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients. Generally, I put in the fats and the sugars and the butter, or excuse me, the fats, the sugars, and the eggs, and I mix those together. And then I put the dry ingredients in with the flour, and I mix that together, and then I put it in there. But sometimes if it's a very soft dough, I may just kind of put things in one at a time. So tip, if you have had your eggs in your fridge for a while, you may want to test them to see if they're still fresh. You can look at the, by fresh date, of course. I only mention this because when I buy eggs, they may be in there for a while. And I think there's a float test that you can do. Another thing that you can do is you can break them into a separate dish and make sure that they're okay before you put in there. I'm pretty sure that these eggs are fresh. One of the first things that my daughter taught my granddaughter to do, she was very small, like 2, and they would bake together, and she let her do the eggs every single time. It was so cute. So, let your kids, let them be messy. Let them play in the kitchen and have fun. Okay, so this is the wrong recipe. I thought it called for 2 eggs. It calls for 2 eggs. My bad. So I hope you were paying attention. I hope you were looking at and wrote down what I said. This one takes 2 eggs. I have done that in the past where I've messed things up because I might have 3 batches going at the same time, and I'm putting ingredients in all different ones. It's probably not a good thing to do. Okay, so we've got half a cup of shortening, half a cup of butter, 1 cup of peanut butter. Now comes the regular sugar. And I kept my cup size clean because I knew I was going to use it for dry ingredients. And I went through many different kinds of canister types. I use, for the sugar, I use this one from IKEA. It's just the large round canister. Has a nice lid. These are interchangeable on my other glass containers that I put soup and stuff in. Speaking of which, that was another thing for preparing. So when the kids were little, well, when they were younger, part of baking day was putting on a pot of soup so that you didn't have to, and we put it in the crock pot early in the morning so that by lunchtime it would be ready and you didn't have to stop and figure out something to eat, and you were eating something nutritious since you were dealing with sugar and chocolate and stuff like that all day. So I forgot to mention that in the beginning. Okay, so here goes the brown sugar. This calls for packed brown sugar. I just use a big tablespoon, put it in there and pack it. Now, I used to have, do you guys remember, speaking of aluminum utensils, I used to have the utensils that you would buy, you know, at the 5 and dime, or in our case, we had the 88-cent store. Because, you know, when you first move out, you don't have a whole lot of money. But the cool thing about them, what I loved about them, is that they had the measurement on the bottom that was indented, so that when you turned it over, particularly with your brown sugar, you would see that little measurement imprint on the bottom of the sugar. Do you guys remember that? I wish I could find a set of those. I would love to have a set, just to have for, you know, memory's sake. I think it would be fun, and I might do this. I think at some point I'm going to put up a Christmas tree, and that Christmas tree in the kitchen, not just, you know, a specific tree. So I'm going to put up a Christmas tree in the kitchen, and on that Christmas tree is just going to be, you know, baking stuff, cookie cutters and utensils, and maybe tiny versions of recipe cards. Wouldn't that be cute? That would be so cute. I remember years ago, there was a gal that was working in our office, and she had moved cross country. See how there's the form. She had moved cross country with her daughter. She had left a really bad relationship, and they had nothing. And she told me that they had gotten a Christmas tree and they didn't have anything to put on it. So they pulled out stuff from their kitchen, like just spoons and forks and old ribbon and stuff like that. And she said it was the most beautiful Christmas tree she'd ever done. I thought that was really sweet and very inventive, you know, where you take a situation and you make the best of it. So brown sugar is in there. So far, again, half a cup of shortening, half a cup of butter, cup of peanut butter, cup of brown sugar, cup of regular sugar, 2 eggs. I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to mix it. And for this one, I'm not going to use, you can see I'm just putting it in a regular bowl. I am not going to use my KitchenAid. I'm going to hand mix this because it's a very soft dough. I like these kinds of bowls rather than the ones that are more rounded, because you want to be able to get into the corners with your mixer. So a mostly flat-sided bowl is the best way to go. Years ago, my neighbor, who I grew up next to and then eventually moved next door to, when she decided to move into assisted living, she called me over and my daughter over, and she says, okay, here's some things, you know, pick out something that you want. And what I picked out was a set of bowls. And I think they probably went to an old mix master or something like that, but they were about this big and they were very thick, heavy glass, and they were my favorite bowls. And I was so sad when one morning I was pulling stuff out to do baking and they fell on the floor and they broke. It was very sad. Okay, so I'm gonna pause here and I'm gonna do some mixing. Okay, I have finished mixing the soft ingredients, the wet ingredients together, and this is what it looks like, and it's very fluffy and whipped. I just used my regular hand mixer, and now I'm going to do my my dry ingredients. But I want to talk a little bit about cookie texture and what I look for in a cookie. So what is important to me in a cookie may not be what you're looking for. I like cookies that are crunchy. No, that's not the right word. They're firm, but they crumble on the outside and kind of melts in your mouth. And they're not hard. They're soft, but not gooey on the inside. So they're firm, they're crumbly, they melt in your mouth. Maybe that's the better way to say it. And that's what these are. Now, to get that texture, some cookies call for all butter. So my sugar cookie recipe, no, that one I do put shortening in. The shortbread recipe is all butter. Many recipes call for all butter. Some recipes call for all shortening, but I find that you get the very best results, or at least the best results that I'm looking for, when you have a mix of both. So sometimes I will find a really great recipe, but the texture of the cookie is not quite right, and I will try that recipe out where I do half shortening, half butter. And shortening will give you a softer cookie, and butter will give you a flatter cookie. So if you've ever baked cookies where the cookies just kind of spread out real flat and they kind of become crunchy, which tastes really good, but may not be the texture that you're looking for. I like mine to have some loft and you know, a good chew and then crunchy around the edges, and that's what I get when I mix the two. As I mentioned before, I don't use butter Crisco. That's not my jam. I do use real butter, 100% real butter. That's something else I wanted to mention because I had an issue last year. So I use regular salted butter. I think the little bit of salt in the butter gives a better cookie taste. If you're a purist, you may want to use the sweet cream unsalted butter. This is just regular butter. This is Costco because butter was super expensive again this year. And but it's different than what I use for my eating butter. And I'm not promoting any particular brand. I'm just talking about different kinds of butters. I like to use a grass-fed butter. What I discovered last year, I kind of gradually, you know, moved between the regular butter, organic butter, grass-fed, organic butter, etc. And it does taste very good. There is a definite difference. But what I discovered is when you get to a butter like this, the fat content, this is what I'm assuming. I think the fat content ratio is different. And I was having a really hard time getting my cookies to form together. And I'm talking about the cookies like, my shortbread cookies, that sort of thing, where you have a super crumbly dough and you have to form it or you have to roll it out. And I found it for pie crust as well. And it was very hard because the butter was so solid that it wasn't giving me the texture I want. So this year I'm going back to my regular butter. I'm saving this for all my other cooking and eating, and for the cookies to get the right texture, I'm using that. So I wanted to pass that tip along. Next is the dry ingredients, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about what I do with those. If I'm going to hand mix, meaning the last mix of the flour in by hand, I sift my flour. Now, if you're a baker, you know that measuring a cup of sifted flour versus a cup of flour is a different measurement of flour. What I do is I measure out my flour first, so I'm getting the right amount of flour, and then I sift it. And that's just so that it is very fine and it's a lot easier to stir in. So what I will do is my handy dandy sifter, and it broke. So I have to do the hand thing. I was going to use my grandma's, but I'm going to try to get through baking season with this one until I go get myself a new one. And it's very sad. I've had this since I moved out of the house 40 some years ago. So I'm going to measure out my flour, make sure I have the right recipe this time. Calls for 2.5 cups of flour. My half cup is dirty, so I'm going to use my 1/4 cup, and I'm going to put the first half cup in by itself. And then I'm going to pause for a minute and I'll show you why. So this is my other preferred canisters. You can buy these in, I think you can buy most anywhere that has like homeware stuff. They're the big glass ones. The important part is that they have a large opening to get your hands in and out and to get your measuring cups in and out of. On my wish list, my lifetime wish list, I would love to have a Hoosier cabinet. I think that they were so cool the way they were set up for baking and stuff like that. I haven't found the right one. I found a lot, and they tend to be pretty pricey here on the West Coast. Okay, I still need to put 2 more in. I've put half a cup in, but now I'm going to put in my baking powder, my baking soda, and my salt, and I'm going to sift it with this flour. So it's half a teaspoon of salt. Here's another thing. these. Does anybody remember these? Do you still have these? These are what I grew up with on the counter, and they are what I went out and bought when I moved out of the house, and I still have the same ones. And the great things about these is that your measuring spoons fit in them. I don't use them for anything else but baking. So there's half a teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And I'm almost out of baking powder. It's a good thing I have another one. And a teaspoon and a half of soda. If anything is like a teaspoon and a half or something like that, I usually use the divisible measurement and times it times however many. So in this case, I'm going to use my half teaspoon. I'm just breaking up the lumps here. 1, 2, 3, makes a teaspoon and a half. Okay, so I'm going to sift that together. So that gives me a nice even mixture. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in the bowl. And very carefully, because you know how flour likes to fly, I'm very carefully going to, on a slow speed, mix this in. The reason I do this, where I'm sifting in my baking soda and salt in with the flour, is so that I get an even distribution, and sifted it, and then I can blend it into my recipe, and I know that it's evenly distributed. So now I can do the 2 remaining cups of flour, and I hope I'm not making this more complicated. I just wanted to share the tips that I've learned over the years for my cookies. It doesn't mean that you can't just dump it in and it will turn out fine. It probably will. So cup 1, again, just like when I'm counting cross stitch, and cup 2. I use regular all-purpose flour. I think I get the best results from it. I don't use a specialty flour. I do try to get organic ingredients as much as possible. And I'm just going to sift this. Another thing, if you don't know, if you're a new baker, do not ever wash your sifter. Unless you get something icky on it and you have to wash it, you know, like cookie dough, don't wash it. Just tap it off, put it away dry. They will rust and eventually the mechanism will break. If you have to wash it, and then, you know, heat up your tea kettle or something and pour really boiling hot water over it and then set it out to dry. The hot water will heat up the metal and it will help dry faster and get dry in all of those little crevices. Okay, so let's get this out of the way. I've got to do a taste test. Good. So I eat cookie dough. I have ate cookie dough for all my life, 60 years. I have never gotten sick. Now, that's not to say if you have a bad egg, you might get sick, but I've never worried about it. You do you. You do what you feel is important for you. Okay, so I've got my cookie dough where I have incorporated half a cup of flour with the baking soda, baking powder, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to pour this in. And then it's time to stir. I picked this one up. This is an olive wood. It's very pretty. I picked this one up at Trader Joe's for $2.99. It is super sturdy. I cannot tell you how many of these wooden spoons I broke right here. These are the ones that have stood the test of time. They've been through many years of cookie baking. Ones like this balsa wood one, that's not gonna make it. I just brought it out to show you. So I very gently fold it in. Try not to get flour everywhere. And you're gonna have just a much better texture on your cookie if you're hand mixing them. This is where you get your workout. You know, it's the other side of eating the cookie. You gotta work for it. This is a very soft dough. And you're going to refrigerate it, which is why I make it first. It does not take very long to get the flour incorporated. Now you can have this recipe. I believe this is my double recipe, and it makes, let's see, I don't remember how many it makes. Sorry about that. I'm thinking it's probably in the vicinity of 6 dozen. If it's more or less than that, I will put it in the description if I remember. I will put it in the description if I figure it out before I post the video is what I really meant to say. So when I make this, and the reason I make a double batch is I make one without chocolate chips and I make one with chocolate chips. So I double the batch. See, that's all it took to stir it in. I'm going to find me a container. Is that gonna be big enough? That's not gonna be big enough. It's gonna be this one. And I dig out approximately half of the batter. However much you want. I guess that other one might have worked. And then I take half a package of chocolate chips and I mix them with the rest. So I had made cookies the other day for guests, and so I have half a package of chocolate chips. I'm actually going to use only a quarter. No, I'm going to use the whole thing. And mix that in. And don't be limited by the package size. Put as many chocolate chips as you want in there. I used to do milk chocolate all the time, but I went to the dark side. I really do prefer dark chocolate. Okay, this time I'm gonna fish out a good portion of this. And let's see, what else have we got in here? And I have about this much left, and I'm gonna throw some salted caramel in here. So I talked about these at the beginning of Vlogmas. Last time I was at Trader Joe's, they were still there. So these are salted sea salt caramel baking chips. I'm gonna throw some in there because doesn't peanut butter chocolate chip sea salt caramel sound really good? So I just used a little bit of my batch. And I'm gonna mix that in. This is gonna be a definite sugar high for someone. And there we go. I've got 3 different batches that I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna wrap this up. And let's see. I don't know how long this video is so far. I have a feeling it's pretty long. So I think I'm just gonna talk you through the next recipe. and show you some stitching and get these in the oven. Oh, I guess that's the important part, oven. Because I need to put these in the fridge, you want to chill these for at least an hour. Many times if I'm doing big batches of cookies, I will make these the night before baking day, and I just put the dough in the fridge and then I pull them out and just start baking. You want to preheat your oven for 375. You roll the dough into a ball about the size of a large walnut. I usually grab 2 teaspoons and I use these. And I grab it with one and I scoop it off with the other. You can use a scoop, but if you start using these, now they have their place. In my humble opinion, they don't belong with chocolate chip or peanut butter cookies, because part of the taste and the experience of those cookies is how they're shaped. And if you are shaping them with these, they are not going to turn out the same as if you just use your little teaspoon and plop them on the pan. These and the peanut butter ones, and again, I don't know if I'll get to the point where, I'm not sure if I'm including the baking of these in today's video, but you roll them into the ball and then you dip a fork in flour and you flatten the top. It's very important. That's part of the cookie experience. They need to have those little ridges and those little bumps on top for them to taste correct. Okay, so back to here. Preheat the oven to 375. Roll the dough into little balls and then you place them 3 inches apart on a lightly greased baking sheet. I don't grease mine because mine are seasoned. And you flatten them with a fork dipped in flour crisscross, and you bake until set, about 10 minutes. Do not overbake these. You will end up with really hard cookies. You want to bake them till you're just starting to see the brown around the edge and that they're very brown on the bottom. And you might have to do a batch, do a pan before you get the timing right. For my oven, it's about 10 minutes. Okay, so let's get these in the fridge and I will see you soon. Okay, I'm back. I did a little bit of cleanup. The peanut butter cookie dough is in the fridge chilling. I have a batch of sugar cookie dough. The butter is softening in here. I'll finish that up later and I'll kind of talk you through that recipe later in the video. So I thought maybe I should show you what I mean about spooning out the cookie dough. So I use a teaspoon. Just grab a teaspoon out of your your teaspoon drawer and you grab another one, because if you use your fingers, you'll end up eating all the cookie dough. And you just drop it on there. I don't smush it down. I just let it fall as it may. And you're gonna get a better cookie out of it. This is how I learned how to make them. I thought the scoops were a great idea. I was gonna have perfect looking cookies, and it does work for some things. So like you're doing snickerdoodles, that's kind of a great thing. If you're trying to make smaller cookies and for littles and you're parsing it out, that's fine too. But for general cookie making, I find that spooning it out like this in a big lump and then just letting it cook and become the shape that a cookie was meant to be, you will enjoy the results a lot more, and it's a whole lot easier to clean. Those little cookie scoops are kind of a challenge to clean. They do fine in the dishwasher, but the mechanism wears out. Again, they're great for measuring out things if that's what you need to do, but I really prefer this method. So I'm gonna get this on. I've got the oven warming up. This is the cookie dough that I made last week when I had some company coming. I made a dozen out of the batch and I put the rest of the batch in the freezer. So my chocolate chip cookie dough recipe and the peanut butter, you can actually freeze that as well. I generally like doing the peanut butter one fresh. Chocolate chip cookie dough's perfectly fine, frozen. Keeps me from eating the dough. So basically, that's how they look. And that's how they're gonna go in the oven. And so I will pop these in the oven and I will take some pictures of what they look like when they're done. Okay, there is a batch of cookies in the oven and I thought I would take a little bit of time to get back to cross stitch. I have been stitching steadily on, I've been stitching on In Heaven and Nature Sing, and here's my progress. I did press it last night because I'm gonna switch projects. I have the mailbox done with that cute little cardinal on top and one of the trees underneath done. And this is being done on vintage maple sugar. Here's the chart cover. And I'm doing this, it's a 32 count, so I'm doing it 2 over 2. So that one is coming along. I'm probably gonna have to decide which one between this one and Winter Wonderland am I gonna do continued focus on. But I wanted to stop and stitch a little bit on a few other things. So I stitched in the rest of the face on my Santa on O Tannenbaum. He's coming along nicely. It's a great stitch. This is by Brenda Gervais. And I am using the called for threads, and I'm doing it on a 36 count bramble. So there's the chart. And here are the called for colors. I like it on the bramble. I was getting a little bit worried about the face and the beard, but I think all in all, once I get it put together, it's gonna be just fine. So stitched a little bit on that last night. And then I was sitting there thinking, I have all of these projects that I had kitted up from last year and ones that I had pulled that I wanted to start. So I pulled out and I chose a linen, and I'm not sure what this is. I have the count, it's a 30 count. It looks like it might be a week's gray. And I'm gonna start Merry Old Christmas by Not Forgotten Farm. So I pulled the floss. I could not find one of the colors. It calls for 919. I had 918. I looked on my DMC color card and I don't think that the difference between those is going to make much of a difference. So there's the colors. I love Lori's take on Christmas colors. I think that's gonna be gorgeous. So I'm gonna start that sometime today and make a pen pillow with that. So that's an update on my cross stitch. And then while cookies are baking, I wanted to spend a few minutes and kind of talk you through some of the other recipes that I used to use. I don't anymore because I don't do great big batches. But I have some favorites that I'd like to share. I think I talked a little bit about some of them yesterday. And then there's more here. So back down memory lane, does anybody remember these? They came in a pack every month or 2 months or 3 months, some sort of schedule. They're Betty Crocker. They were the recipe card library. So I think when you ordered it, you got like a box, which is at my mother's house, if she still has it. I don't know if she still has it. Hers was kind of a burnt red color. So you get a box, and then every so often you would get a pack of cards in the mail, and they were so cool. It was really fun to, you know, kind of sift through the cards to see what was, you know, in that particular edition. This is a coffee cake exceptional, and it is a great coffee cake recipe. I stole this out of my mom's recipe box, and this is the coffee cake recipe I use all the time. I really like that. My chocolate chip cookie recipe comes out of this set. So if you have it, it's not the one that's in the Betty Crocker cookbook. It's the one that's in this set. And it's where I learned because we had many different chocolate chip cookie recipes. We tried the ones on the back of the chips. We tried, you know, out of magazines, whatever. That one was the best, and that's where I learned about the ratio of the butter to the shortening and the consistency of the cookie. So we went over peanut butter cookies. I don't know how, I haven't really edited the video yet. I'm just kind of doing this in segments. So we did the peanut butter cookies today. I have sugar cookies, and I call them Christmas sugar cookies because they're a little bit different than a regular sugar cookie. I have that dough, I have the butter softening for that dough, and I will finish that dough up today and I will put it in the refrigerator. It doesn't call for refrigerating it before using it, but I find that you can handle the dough a lot easier if you do it that way. And this one I do use my KitchenAid for to mix it up. It is a very, very stiff dough. Having said that though, do not overmix any of your cookie dough. It will change the texture of your cookies and you'll get kind of hard cookies. I will not share this particular recipe yet. Maybe next year. Maybe that's something I will do. But I will tell you that the secret ingredient and what makes this recipe fantastic is not using just vanilla, but also almond extract. Okay. The molasses cookies will come later when my son gets here. We will make those together. Almond roca I will be making. I am not making it today. I'm not making the fudge today, number one, because it's raining, even though this fudge generally turns out when it rains. And number two, because the almond roca, back to the almond roca, I didn't get my soda crackers. So I usually like to get the Keebler soda crackers because they're very crisp and light and they make really good almond roca. I also used to make on a regular basis almond biscotti. It's very easy to make and use a lot of egg whites. Well, not a lot. Use egg whites and eggs and you bake it twice. So you roll it out and you bake it once, kind of halfway done, and then you slice it and then you turn it and you bake it again on a really low heat. And I definitely use the KitchenAid for this because this dough is really stiff. Baklava I talked about yesterday. That's made with phyllo dough and butter, and depending on what nuts you like, you can make it with walnuts or almonds. You can actually make it with other nuts, and sugar and honey and water. And the reason I say it's a two-person, you can do it with one person, it's just really hard, but you don't want your phyllo dough to dry out, and you basically tearing off a sheet, buttering it, putting your nut mixture, putting your honey mixture on top of all of it, and just the construction process takes a while, but it is very good. I have a recipe here called Delicious Cookies, and this came from my old roommate, and she made these cookies and brought them to an event once, and I took a bite and I was like, man, these are delicious cookies. What are they called? And she said, Delicious Cookies. And I said, I know they're delicious, but what are they called? She goes, Delicious Cookies, and that's the name. If I were to describe them, they're kind of like a pecan sandy. They don't have pecans in them, but it's that texture. It's that really buttery, melts in your mouth, crispy, but yet melts texture. And they are like a heart attack in a cookie. They have butter, they have oil, they have a lot of sugar, and they have Rice Krispies in them and flour, and they are a wonderful cookie. And then another one that I make is called a lemon sunshine cookie. This is one cookie where I use a mix. And what you do is you start out with a lemon cake mix and you add an egg and oil and water and lemon zest and pecans. So it is similar to pecan sandy as well, except it's lemon. And then you make a powdered sugar with lemon juice kind of glaze that when you take them out of the oven, they kind of come out like a molasses cookie where it's that texture and they crinkle on top, and then you put this glaze on top, and it's a very bright taste of lemon when you bite into it, which can be nice as a balance to all of the chocolate and the peanut butter and that sort of thing for other cookies. One cookie that I have tried to make forever, I've never gotten the knack of it, and that is Russian tea cakes. They are also called Mexican wedding cakes. Mexican wedding cakes. They're exact same recipe. How do I know? I have both recipes right here. And the only difference is a 1/4 cup of flour. It's the exact same recipe. I think it's the exact same cookie, but mine are always gooey. I've never been able to make them. So every year when I was still working, a coworker of mine, we would do a cookie exchange, and she would bake extra Russian tea cakes / Mexican wedding cakes, and I would bake whatever she wanted, and we would trade. And I love these cookies. I think they're really wonderful. You can make them with or without nuts in them. I like them with walnuts in them. I think they're very good. The other thing I'd like to share with you, this is just a little cheat sheet that I made. It says Christmas dinner. It could work for Thanksgiving dinner, but every year I would sit down to make my grocery list. And you know, you make the same things every year, and I would always forget something, and it was so frustrating. So one year I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a master list. So anytime I'm doing a holiday dinner, I'm going to pull it out. So here's my master list. It's still here. It's got some scribbles on it. Turkey, ham, salmon. Living in the Pacific Northwest, we often had salmon with our dinner. Mashed potatoes, gravy, stuffing. Cornbread casserole. That's a whole nother recipe to share at another time. And green bean casserole. Cooked carrots, broccoli, corn, peas, asparagus. Take your pick. Stuffed mushrooms, that's another thing we used to love to do. We would generally have really big gatherings, and sometimes a friend of ours would bring his version of stuffed mushrooms. Sometimes I would make them. Rolls, cranberry sauce, pickled vegetables. I like to do a pickled vegetable tray where you put out pickled asparagus and pickles and olives, etc. Stuffed celery, deviled eggs, of course. And then if I had a certain cousin or two coming, you had to make twice as much because otherwise you wouldn't get any. Dutch apple pie, cherry pie, pumpkin pie, cheesecake, cookies, French silk pie, which was a sugar-free one, and then of course all of the cookies and the applesauce cake. So that was my master list that I still have. So I thought I'd share those with you. And then the last one, since we're talking cookies, I have a lot of cookie cutters. I love cookie cutters. I think they're fun. This is completely full. This is completely full. And I have the requisite gingerbread, snowflakes, etc. In fact, I've bought a set on clearance last year, just like this one I showed you last year, or that I showed you last video, where's the little house. These are also mug hugger cookie cutters, and this one is a snowflake and a hat, and I have not used either of these yet. But every year I would get out the big thing of Christmas cookie cutters for us to make our sugar cookies, and every year we would bypass all of those and we would use these. Every year. These are the same ones I had as a child. That's why I have two of these. The Santa, the star. So the star, the bell, the Santa, and the Christmas tree. I hunted high and low, and I think I found most of a set. Now, granted, these were purchased at the 88-cent store for probably 88 cents for the whole set. But they're the favorites. They're what I use every year, continue to use, and it's just a great memory attached. I have seen a quilt where someone took these and they traced those cookie cutters in wool, and they put them on a quilt, and it was adorable. So I think that's all I have for you today. I'm gonna stop here and start editing, and I have some more baking to do tomorrow. I have a lot to get done between now and Tuesday when my first exchange is happening, and I hope to see you again soon. Happy holidays, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye-bye.